You think you already know everything an airport can offer you. You checked your ticket twice. You arrived early. You followed every rule they printed on your boarding pass. So you assume you are getting everything you are owed. Wrong, because airports and airlines are not in the business of volunteering good news. They profit when you stay quiet. They profit when you never ask. And they profit most when a tired senior traveler simply accepts whatever the counter agent says without question. Somewhere between the check-in desk and the boarding gate, there are rights sitting untouched, benefits sitting unclaimed, and comfort sitting unused, simply because almost nobody asks the right question at the right moment. Today we are exposing 10 forgotten travel rights that most seniors never use, including one quiet request that can turn a stressful travel day into a smooth one. Watch closely, because several of these rights disappear the moment you stop paying attention. If any of this feels new to you, that is exactly why this channel exists. Hit follow so the next hidden right does not slip past you either. Now, let us begin. Right 10. Hidden Airport Assistance. Skirvis, most seniors never request. Most travelers walk through the terminal alone, pulling their own bags, searching for their own gate, standing in their own long lines, and they assume that is simply how it works. It is not. Most airports offer dedicated assistance for older travelers, and this is not only for passengers using a wheelchair. It can include an escort through security, a guide through unfamiliar terminals, help carrying bags between connections, and priority movement through crowded hallways. Airlines rarely announce this service out loud. It usually has to be requested, sometimes when booking the ticket, sometimes by calling ahead, and sometimes simply by asking at the check-in counter. On the day of travel, many seniors avoid asking because they do not want to feel like they need help. But this service exists precisely because airports know long walks, tight connections, and confusing signage are harder on older bodies, and airlines would rather quietly provide the service than have a passenger miss a connecting flight. The request itself takes less than a minute. A phone call before departure, or a short conversation at the ticket counter, and yet it can completely reshape how the entire travel day unfolds. Some travelers picture a stranger pushing a wheelchair through a busy hallway and feel embarrassed by the image. But the reality is far more flexible than that. An escort can simply walk beside you, carry a bag, point out the shortest route, and disappear the moment you no longer need them. Airports schedule staff specifically for this purpose every single day, which means the service is already paid for, already staffed, and already waiting. The only missing piece is a traveler willing to ask for it. This becomes especially valuable during a tight connection. When a passenger has only 20 or 30 minutes to move between two distant gates, an assistance escort can move you through a shortcut hallway. Use a faster route through security, or radio ahead to hold a gate a few extra minutes if a connection is genuinely at risk. None of this is guaranteed, but none of it is possible either if the traveler never asks. And this is only the beginning of what is normally kept quiet. Right 9. Free lunch. Access during long delays for eligible senior travelers. A delay announcement flashes on the board, and most passengers sigh, find a hard plastic chair, and wait for hours surrounded by noise, crowds, and stale air. But here is what almost nobody realizes. During certain lengthy delays, some airlines will offer complimentary lounge access, even to travelers who never paid for it. This is more common for elderly passengers, passengers with medical needs, or passengers facing delays caused directly by the airline itself. The lounge offers quiet seating, better restrooms, sometimes food, sometimes charging stations, and a much calmer environment to wait in, but it is almost never offered automatically. An agent will rarely walk over and mention it. The responsibility falls on the passenger to politely ask whether lounge access is available. Due to the delay, many seniors sit through hours of discomfort simply because they never thought to ask a simple question at the counter. Airlines are far more willing to grant this request than most people expect, especially when the delay stretches beyond 2 or 3 hours, or is clearly the airline's fault rather than weather. The timing of the request matters as well. Asking early, right after the delay is announced, often works better than waiting until frustration has already built up and the counter line has grown longer. A calm early question tends to get a calm, helpful answer, while a frustrated late question sometimes gets met with a shrug. Remembering to ask, and asking early, can transform hours of discomfort sitting on hard terminal furniture into hours of quiet comfort with a proper chair, a warm drink, and a moment of real rest before the next flight. It also helps to mention the delay length specifically, since a 2-hour delay and a 6-hour delay are treated very differently behind the counter. The longer the wait, the stronger the case for lounge access, and the more willing an agent tends to be once the request is framed calmly and clearly, rather than as a complaint. Right 8. The secret timing for free seat UGRADs before boarding. Most travelers believe seat upgrades only happen through miles, credit cards, or expensive last-minute payments, but there is a quieter window that often gets ignored. In the final hour before boarding, airlines sometimes finalize seating charts. And if premium seats remain empty, gate agents occasionally offer free upgrades, especially to travelers who ask politely and mention any mobility needs or simple discomfort with tight economy seating. Extra legroom seats near the front can also open up last minute if other passengers rebooked, missed their connection, or changed their itinerary entirely. The trick is timing, arriving at the gate early and calmly asking whether any complimentary upgrades are available before boarding groups are called increases the odds significantly. Agents are far more likely to reward a patient, respectful traveler than someone demanding special treatment or arguing about price. This window usually closes the moment boarding begins, which means most passengers never even get the chance because they arrive at the gate right as their group number is called and walk straight onto the plane. A traveler who instead arrives 40 minutes early checks in politely at the counter and simply asks whether any upgrades are available that day, often finds a completely different outcome. Sometimes the answer is no, but the cost of asking is nothing, and the potential reward is a wider seat, more legroom, and a far more comfortable flight. Arriving early and asking early is often the entire difference between an economy middle seat and a much more comfortable seat near the front of the cabin. It also helps to be flexible about which specific seat you receive, since an agent working quickly under pressure will move faster for a traveler who simply asks for any available upgrade rather than one who insists on a particular row or a particular side of the aircraft. Right 7. Priority Sekik T screening a variable UPON request at many airports. Security lines can feel like the most stressful part of any trip, standing for long periods, removing shoes, unpacking bags, and moving through crowded checkpoints while trying to keep track of a passport, a phone, and a boarding pass all at once, but many airports offer priority screening lanes for older travelers. And this benefit often goes completely unused, simply because nobody asks about it. This is different from paid programs that require an application months in advance, and it usually only requires a brief, polite word with a TSA officer or an airport staff member stationed near the entrance of the security area. Some airports have a dedicated lane clearly marked for this purpose. Others simply allow staff to move an elderly traveler to a shorter line upon a simple, polite request. This reduces standing time, reduces the physical strain of long queues, and reduces the stress of rushing while removing shoes and belts under pressure from a long line behind you. The smart move is to calmly ask a staff member near the checkpoint whether priority screening is available before joining the main line. Most seniors never think to ask because they assume such services only exist for wheelchair users or passengers with a visible disability. But that is simply not true. Standing for 30 minutes in a slow line becomes completely avoidable once you know the right words to say, and once you understand that asking costs nothing but a moment of courage. A short, simple sentence, such as asking whether a shorter line is available for an older traveler, today is usually all it takes, and staff members hear this request often enough that it rarely draws any unwanted attention at all. Right 6. Senior-only airfare discounts hidden from booking sites. Most travelers search flights online, compare prices across several websites, and book whatever looks cheapest on the screen, but online booking engines rarely display every fare category that actually exists in an airline system. Some airlines maintain senior discount fares that are not shown during a normal online search. These fares sometimes appear only when booking directly by phone, through a travel agent, or in person at a ticket counter, and they are almost never advertised because airlines prefer selling standard fares first and reserving these quieter discounts for travelers who specifically ask. The discount is not always huge, but it can be meaningful, especially on routes with limited availability or during periods when standard fares are already inflated. The smart move is to find the best price online first, then call the airline directly and simply ask whether a senior fare exists for that same route and travel date. Sometimes the answer is no, but sometimes the answer saves real money that a website would never have revealed on its own. Airlines are not required to advertise every fare type that exists in their system, which means the traveler willing to make one extra phone call often gains access to pricing that other passengers scrolling through the same website never even knew existed. Some of these fares also come with slightly more flexible change policies. Since they are designed with older travelers in mind, which means the discount is sometimes only half of the actual value, and the added flexibility around dates quietly makes up the rest. Right 5. Free flight changes or flexible rebooking for senior passengers. Plans change, health changes, weather changes, and sometimes a booked flight simply no longer works for reasons entirely outside anyone's control. Most travelers assume a change fee is unavoidable once a ticket is purchased, but many airlines quietly offer flexibility for older travelers, particularly when a medical situation, a family emergency, or an unexpected health concern is involved. This is rarely printed clearly on a website. It usually requires a direct phone call and a calm, honest explanation of the situation to a representative. Some airlines waived change fees entirely. Others simply reduced them. and a few will rebook without any additional cost at all if the request is reasonable and clearly explained without exaggeration. The key is politeness combined with directness, explaining the situation honestly, mentioning any documentation available if it is ever requested, and asking specifically whether a fee can be waived given the circumstances. Many representatives are given far more flexibility in these situations than passengers realize, but that flexibility is almost never offered automatically. It has to be requested clearly and calmly. A single respectful phone call made before simply accepting whatever fee appears on the screen can save a substantial rebooking cost that most travelers assume is fixed in stone and impossible to change. It also helps to call rather than rely only on the website, since the online system usually shows only the standard fee, while a live representative often has the authority to apply an exception that no web page will ever display on its own. Right 4. Priority boarding privileges airlines rarely mention. Most passengers assume priority boarding is reserved only for first-class passengers or elite frequent flyers with years of loyalty status, but many airlines quietly allow early boarding for older travelers as well, even those flying in ordinary economy seats. This reduces the stress of navigating a crowded jet bridge while carrying bags, gives extra time to store luggage in the overhead bin without rushing or feeling watched, and allows a calmer walk down the aisle instead of fighting through a wall of standing passengers all trying to move at once. This privilege is rarely printed clearly on the boarding pass, and it is almost never announced over the airport speaker system. It typically requires simply approaching the gate agent before general boarding begins and asking whether early boarding is available for older passengers. Most gate agents are genuinely happy to accommodate this request because it also reduces congestion and confusion for everyone else boarding after you. Yet most seniors stand quietly in the general boarding line simply because nobody ever told them a shorter, calmer path onto the plane already exists. Asking a single quiet question at the gate before boarding begins can completely change how the entire boarding experience feels from start to finish, and it is worth remembering that this request usually works best when made well before the first boarding announcement, since agents are far more focused and far more able to help during the quiet minutes before the gate area fills with waiting passengers. Right 3. Complimentary hotel, meals, and transport after major flight disruptions. When a flight gets canceled or delayed overnight due to the airline's own fault, many passengers assume they are simply out of luck, forced to sleep uncomfortably in a terminal chair, or pay out of pocket for an expensive last-minute hotel room, but airlines are often required, or at minimum strongly incentivized, to cover a hotel, meals, and even transportation to and from that hotel when the disruption is clearly their own responsibility rather than something like severe weather. This benefit is almost never announced clearly. At the counter, agents may simply rebook a flight for the next morning without mentioning any additional support that may be available. The traveler has to ask directly and specifically whether hotel and meal accommodations are provided due to the disruption. Phrasing matters here. Calmly asking what accommodations are available due to the disruption often produces a very different, more helpful answer than silently accepting the very first offer given without question. Many seniors end up paying for a hotel room out of their own pocket that should have been fully covered. simply because nobody explained that the option existed in the first place. A firm but polite question at the counter, asked before walking away, is often the only thing standing between an uncomfortable, expensive night and a fully covered, comfortable one. Keeping a boarding pass, a delay notice, or a simple photo of the departure board can also help support the request later if reimbursement ever needs to be discussed after returning home, since a small piece of evidence often speeds up a conversation that would otherwise take much longer to resolve. Right 2. Last minute. Premium seat you graz at the gate. Even after boarding groups have already been called, opportunities sometimes still remain right up until the cabin door closes. Occasionally, a passenger scheduled for a premium seat simply does not show up for the flight, and airlines would rather fill that empty seat than let it sit unused all the way to the destination. Gate agents sometimes offer these newly available seats to travelers waiting nearby, especially if a polite request for an upgrade has already been made earlier in the process. This is different from the earlier upgrade window because it can happen even during the final minutes of boarding. The traveler, who has already expressed interest, remained visible and patient near the counter and stayed calm throughout the process, is far more likely to be offered the seat than someone who boarded early and disappeared quietly down the aisle without ever asking. The smart move is to mention interest in an upgrade early, then remain near the gate area until boarding is nearly complete rather than rushing onto the plane. The moment your group is called, agents genuinely remember faces, and a calm, patient traveler is usually the very first person considered when an empty premium seat unexpectedly needs filling at the last possible moment. Right 1. Hidden medical and mobility support strevis. A variable at no extra cost. This is the right that quietly changes the most trips of all. Many seniors travel with joint pain, fatigue, balance concerns, or simply the ordinary exhaustion of walking long terminal distances between gates that feel farther every year, and most airports offer far more support than passengers ever realize is sitting right there waiting for them. Wheelchair transport between gates. Motorized cart rides through long terminal hallways. Priority elevator access instead of long escalators. And even dedicated assistance during tight connections are usually available at absolutely no additional cost to the passenger. The problem is that almost none of this is advertised clearly anywhere in the booking process, and many travelers assume these services exist only for passengers with visible disabilities or a wheelchair already in use. That assumption is simply not accurate. Comfort and safety on their own are entirely valid reasons to request support. Requesting this help in advance, either when booking the original ticket or by calling the airline ahead of time, ensures the service is fully ready and waiting rather than scrambled together at the very last moment in a rush. Many seniors quietly push through exhaustion and discomfort simply because they never wanted to ask for help or draw attention to themselves. But airports plan for exactly these requests every single day without exception. Using this service is not a weakness in any sense. It is simply using exactly what the entire system was built and staffed to provide. And it is often the single biggest quiet upgrade to comfort that any trip can offer a traveler willing to ask. A short call to the airline a few days before departure, mentioning any mobility concern honestly and without exaggeration, is usually enough to have a cart or an escort already arranged and waiting the moment you step off the plane, rather than searching for help in a crowded, unfamiliar terminal after a long flight. Every one of these rights already exists right now. They are sitting quietly inside airline policy pages and airport service desks, waiting patiently for a traveler who simply knows to ask. The difference between a stressful trip and a smooth one often comes down to a single respectful question asked at exactly the right moment. Most passengers never learn these things because nobody truly benefits from telling them, not the airline, not the airport, and certainly not a system built around silence and quiet assumption. But now you know better than most. Which of these 10 rights did you not know about before today? Tell us in the comments below. And if you found this useful, share it with someone who still travels the old way, waiting in every line without question, paying every fee without asking, and never speaking up for the comfort they were always entitled to. Subscribe to Fly Smart After 70 for one new hidden travel right every single week. Because the smartest travelers are not the ones who fly the most, they are simply the ones who finally learn to ask. And starting with your very next trip, that traveler can be you.